Bernie Sanders in the house. Burn it, burn it, burn it, burn it.
I do criticize him. I just don't call him a coward in these things. However, Bernie strikes me right now as kind of doing what Obama did. Like Obama ran on all these platitudes, but he had this massive organizing army and he left them on the White House lawn. I mean, he didn't use it and then just threw up his hands and said, well, Mitch McConnell, Paul Ryan can't do anything. I mean, Bernie didn't win the presidency, but I mean, his Slack channel has more people than DSA has signed up. I mean, just the sheer apparatus that Bernie's campaign over 4 years created, you could be doing serious things. And if you want to take him at face value, maybe you disagreed, but all right, he said, we're going to get Biden in and then we're going to fight him on day one. Well, it's day one, and I don't really hear anything from Bernie right now. I'm pretty sure he's smart enough to know he's not going to get a White House parking pass, much less labor secretary. Why do you think he's not using that army? Because right now you just have these different islands, Sunrise Movement, Justice Democrats, but it's not an organized progressive movement to tap into this leverage you're speaking of.
I love the brother, and you know, even in love, people have deep disagreements about these things. But I think, again, he's fearful of the neo-fascism of Trump. People look at Biden, they don't really want to tell the full truth. He's created the best economy that we can get. Is this the best that we can get? You're going to tell that lie to the people just for Biden to win?
I'm not looking to be unduly pessimistic here, but I do believe in honesty. And I don't think you can move forward if you don't have an accurate picture of the present. The left isn't just anemic and in despair because it's perpetually disorganized or because they're licking their wounds over political loss. It's also not just because this is an incredibly depressing historical moment that we are all living through, although that certainly doesn't help. I think there are really three pieces here to think about. First was the way in which Bernie's loss occurred. Now, I just watched this Bernie Blackout documentary, which is well done. It is somewhat torturous to relive all the ups and downs of the incredibly abbreviated primary. But most painful was to watch all of the hopeful energy and optimism and organizers and workers sending in their $10 and students knocking on doors and the willingness to believe that things could be different, that things could be better, to actually invest their emotional energy and then watch as someone who barely campaigned had the waters parted for him by Obama and an overwhelming media propaganda narrative, to be so close to having a shot at real change and then watch it all crumble in record-breaking time from a massive coordinated establishment effort fed a sense that the project not only failed, but was perhaps doomed from the outset. Second was the way in which Bernie bent the knee. Now, it was one thing to watch Bernie get out of the race prematurely, in my view, when he could have stayed in longer to gain more leverage and provide a viable alternative should additional questions and credible allegations arise regarding Joe's past. It was another thing to watch Bernie's cringeworthy live stream with his friend Joe and see all the people who hated him and trashed him and would have gone to any lengths to stop him come out with all of their faux praise. But the real killer was to see Bernie actually chastise his supporters who were not ready to climb on board with a candidate who doesn't share their values or their view of politics. Now, I understand why Bernie views the landscape as he does, and I really do believe that he thinks he is acting in what is national interest. But in that moment, not only did it seem like the project was potentially doomed, it appeared that the
to get to the news in a second, but Charlie, I just want to go to you and talk about a poll we had last hour that is just, again, just so disheartening about our former party. A party that said in this Wall Street Journal poll, they were more likely to vote for Donald Trump because he got caught stealing military secrets. He got caught stealing nuclear secrets. He got caught stealing secrets to invade Iran. He got caught stealing assessments of America's military weaknesses. He got caught trying to lead a conspiracy to have fraudulent electors to steal millions of votes from people and from Americans in 7 states. He got caught trying to rig the Georgia election, telling the Republican Secretary of State who recorded the call, the Republican, hey, just get me one more vote.
Right.
Then I lost by, give me 11,000 votes or so. Just find them out there. And on and on and on. And I just can't even believe, I have to believe now, there are people out there, a lot of Republicans out there, that actually are more likely to vote for him because he stole nuclear secrets. What does that say about the Republican Party, our former party?
Well, it doesn't say anything that we haven't seen for a while. I mean, this is a cult, but this poll strikes me as a giant middle finger from the Republican base, basically saying, we're in with this guy. We don't care what he did. We don't care about the coup. We don't care about the criminality. We don't care about the fraud. We don't care about the rape. He is our guy. And we're going to ride with him, not only despite what he has done, but what he will do in the future. So, yes, the poll is alarming. It is also a warning the direction the party is going. Anyone who thinks that this party is going to develop a conscience and is going to stand up against Donald Trump, or that it would provide any guardrails for a Trump 2.0 presidency, I think is incredibly naive. So it confirms something that's been coming for some time, but I don't think that we should understate how alarming it is.
Yeah, and Willie, Charlie said they're sticking with Donald Trump. They're sticking with Donald Trump over America. I mean, George Conway said they were un-American last hour because they support a guy that stole nuclear secrets. They support a party that's actually blocking the promotion of hundreds of military men and women, that's standing in the way of military readiness, that hates our intel community now, that hates the FBI now, that hates any law enforcement, that doesn't do what helps Donald Trump. If any law enforcement agency tries to hold Donald Trump accountable, they hate them. If any law enforcement officers try to stop Donald Trump's mob from going in and wrecking the United States Capitol and beating up cops with flags, bloodying their heads, almost killing them. And the fact 4 ended up dying after January 6th. Their families say because of January 6th and because of Donald Trump's riots, they don't give a damn about those Capitol Hill cops. In fact, they mock them on TV. And so you can go on and on and on. It seems not only have they decided to stick with Donald Trump over other candidates, they've decided to stick with Donald Trump over America.
Welcome to a earlier edition of RBN Live Tuesdays. I'm one of your hosts. I'm CJ. What's up, Nick?
Hey, what's poppin', my friends, my family? Welcome back. Welcome back to RBN. As you guys see, that is a high effort news reporting from the channel that Mediaite ranked as some of the most reliable news outlets in the country.
Just a lie.
That opinionated garbage that you just heard from Morning Joe, we got quite a few more to show you guys.
Yeah.
Mediaite claim that they are the most reliable, non-biased news source. As you just see them, laughable. They run campaign ads for Joe Biden every goddamn segment. It just can't. And there's another cringe one. I don't know if you've probably seen this one where Morning Joe Scarborough was like, Biden, people keep underestimating Biden. He's still doing that. He's still doing it. CJ doing this spill. People underestimating Biden. Biden been so great. Down the line, if you look at everything, he's been amazing. But according to Mediaite, we're propaganda.
We're the ones in the wrong, according to them. Yeah. And we do got a couple of clips. That was the least one that we're gonna be interrupting. So I decided to start with that one first. But yeah, we got probably 2 other segments or clips maybe from Morning Joe about this rematch that
CJ.
they just cannot believe. But go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, isn't it interesting that whenever we or anyone who's not a liberal say that the Trump prosecution, the Trump indictments, and their whole Biden weaponizing his Justice Department to go after Trump to hurt him in the election, thus election interference, they say we are repeating conspiracy theories when we say that. They say, oh, are you saying that we only go after Trump because we want to win the election? What are you, a Republican sympathizer? Meanwhile, in this segment, and in quite a few segments I have seen over the course of the last week or two, you have people that saying, why aren't the Trump indictments hurting Trump in the polls? They are quite literally admitting their strategy on air to use the Trump indictments to hurt Trump so Joe Biden can win. So then they go on air like, oh my God, I can't believe this is not working. Why aren't people falling for the Trump indictment thing? Why aren't people supporting Joe Biden? You guys are admitting this is political. Because if it wasn't political, you guys would have went after George W. Bush. You guys would have went after John Bolton, who's a war criminal, who CNN had on the show and platform, right? But they're not going after all the criminals in Washington, D.C., are they? They're going after their chief political rival. And you had a legal expert that even said, man, we got to be careful about this because if you guys prosecute Trump over this, you're getting all of you guys. Everyone do shit that you can technically use the legal system, twist the law in your way to prosecute people. And that is what even non-Trump supporting lawyers have said. Like, this is very squirrely to go after a president, go after someone who's your chief rival on something that's so weak. It's something that they view banana republics doing, right? But CJ, anything else you want? I'll pass it to you because I know we got quite a few.
Yeah. I'll bring up the video again and then start from probably the clip that we were talking about when we were both saying we saw the same clip, which is basically in the beginning because they jump right into it. Like they don't take any time. So I'm going to rewind it and you can hear the anguish, Nick, in their voices. Like they are in pain because it almost feels like they're not in pain because he has different beliefs in how the government's going to be ran. It's like they're in pain because it's like being in pain for a KKK member who's also the mayor of a city and they're at the moment where they have to take the sheet off. It's like, oh, damn. And they don't want the person who's unsheeted, if you will, be in the face of the country. Donald Trump it's like a clear window into what America actually looks like and the way he talks and what he wants to do, how he associates with other countries, or how he said, you're not putting up enough money for this NATO thing. He just says it in plain English. They don't want this sort of representation of what imperialism is because they're still trying to play this tap dance, Nick. They're still trying to play. We're not this. What do you mean? NATO is not that. We're not offensive. We're defensive. They can't say that with the face of this guy as the leader of that. They can't pull that off, and they know it. So there's that, and then there's the fact that he's just not on board with the military-industrial complex in the same way. I'm not saying he's anti-war. He's just not on board in the same way that they are, and that's another thing that they don't like. You see it with his opinion on Ukraine, and that's what I mean. So that's a good way to preface this Hell 2024, which is really a good title for this rematch of Donald Trump and Joe Biden. But here we go. Morning Joe this morning.
In the Republican presidential primary, growing. We'll have much more on those numbers and a hypothetical rematch of 2020 in just a moment.
Well, I got to say, Willie and we've faced this off and on since 47. Yeah. A couple of young kids coming back from the war.
Heroes, their word, not ours.
I never said it.
I didn't either.
I never said it. But it seems every 10, 15 years, they say they're growing a little long in the tooth, Willie, but we just keep on keeping on.
Yeah, we do, despite the Wall Street Journal polling about you and me, actually, too, which was very negative.
And by the way, their small talk is pretty unbearable. Especially if you watch it. Their small talk is completely unbearable, and it shows the difference between our
exactly our whole. But the reason I played it from that point is because he mentions right there where I stopped it. He mentions how the Wall Street Journal's poll includes them. So if you go there, there's the Wall Street Journal poll is more. It's a bunch of things that they ask in that poll. One of which is about media. So that's what he's referring to, and they don't get good poll numbers in that. And the reason the Wall Street Journal, because it's the Wall Street Journal, why this poll is so devastating to their psyche and what they do for a living. But let's jump back right into it right here.
Concerning.
Horrible.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to dig into it, but this is a new tact that we just saw from Joe Biden in the White House, perhaps as we're turning the corner here now, about a year and change away from Election Day, to confront this age issue, which another poll shows is real.
Yeah.
That's kind of like when I say, when you like
all right, so it's like 45 seconds I got to go for, and then they're going to start talking about it.
It's on Saturday night. Yeah, Duke blew out.
I hate when they do this, when they pretend like sports is a top story. To me, they do that, Nick, only when it's bad news. They never do that when the poll says something bad about Donald Trump. They get right. Hey, look at this shit right here. Look at Donald Trump, or they'll have some sort of historical thing that's comparing him to Richard Nixon or something like that. But when it's stuff that's bad about Joe Biden, let's shoot the shit in the beginning of the show for several minutes. They do that all the time. Let's see if they get to it.
I think it's another way. That's the closest they will ever come to try to relate to the average American. Talking about sports, so I think that's another way to do it. Because if you guys see it, the small talk is unbearable. They expose how out of touch they are, like when they just do these little small exchanges. But let's continue.
Yeah. So I'm gonna fast forward it to the part now, and that is right after this guy right here, Conway, because they got to talk about. Here we go. All right, so here we go where it's devastation, and you can hear it in their voice. And here we go.
And Donald Trump in a dead heat in a 2024 general election matchup. In the survey, 46% say they would vote for Biden, while 46% say they would vote for Trump. 8% say they are undecided. So in this conversation, mixing this in really shows you where the country's at, Joe.
Well,
and it's
Gene, I mean,
Trumpified.
just look at the numbers. Like you've got 46% of Americans supporting a guy who's been indicted 4 times, indicted for stealing nuclear secrets, indicted for stealing war plans.
Look, he's doing it again.
A rapist by a New York judge.
He's doing it again. Oh, trust me, guys. These Trump political trials, these trials are not political. But hey, man, why are the poll number changing on the easy trial?
They don't even see how they get how they're opening a window to what they really think, and they don't even see it. Nick. They're that in that bubble. They're that immersed in this disgusting liquid and bubble of the swamp that they don't even understand that that's what they're doing. It's a shame.
Yeah.
But let's continue.
Saying that what he did was akin to rape. You've got a guy that's being charged for his illegal payoffs to porn stars. I mean, we could go down the list. A guy who started a riot on January the 6th, an insurrection, had fake electors, had this fraudulent scheme to steal votes from millions and millions of Americans in 7
Why won't Americans believe in our propaganda?
Called the.
That's why he's repeating it. It's almost torture. It's almost self-torture for himself, because it is. Because it's like he's looking at the number and he's like, man, and he's listing all the shit that he's been talking about. I can't believe this. So it's almost self-torture for both of us. And let's let him continue here.
A Republican, a Secretary of State in Georgia, and said, steal enough votes for me, find enough votes so I can steal Georgia. 46% of Americans are voting for the guy who said he would terminate the Constitution to get back into power.
They think that's
what does that even mean?
Those numbers are unbelievable.
They
but
there
they are. I mean, the Wall Street Journal does good polling.
Maybe it's in white subculture segments, but that they think that is such a like a damning thing. You said this about the Constitution. Yeah, it's like
white Americans like, no, the Constitution. Like, yeah, for one, who gives a shit? Secondly, remember, Mediaite ranked Morning Joe as one of the top 3 most reliable programs. Meanwhile, here they are saying that one political party wants to end the Constitution. You guys want to know who won to end the Constitution? Democrats building Cop City, stealing people's Fourth Amendment rights. You want to know who else wanted to overthrow the Constitution? Joe Biden, who lost a Supreme Court case where he wanted to illegally seize the arms of anyone cops searched and seized. And then it was so extreme, the Supreme Court literally struck it down. You know the unhinged right-wing Supreme Court? Our unhinged right-wing Supreme Court saw what Joe Biden was trying to do, seizing people's guns, which would have affected who, CJ? Black, brown, indigenous, poor working class people. So Biden like, all right, let's take these people's guns. Let's have the police have the ability to seize their guns with no charge. That's what the Biden administration puts for. The Supreme Court knocked that down, right? So why doesn't Joe Scarborough say Joe Biden wanted to overthrow the Constitution when he tried to seize Americans' guns illegally? You guys understand what he tried to do, and I can pull the receipt if you guys don't remember. I reported on this quite a while ago. He violated the Second and the Fourth Amendment at least. Like the Second and Fourth Amendment, the Supreme Court found Biden guilty of. They also found Biden guilty of violating the First Amendment, right? Pressuring social media companies to censor opposition. So only Trump want to throw the Constitution out? You guys see my response is not a defense of Trump at all. It's like these partisan hacks. This is the highest form of propaganda. Meanwhile, Mediaite said we do propaganda, and they rate them as reliable. You guys see how damning that article is? But let's continue.
Yeah, it's so eye-opening who they put and where they put them as to who Mediaite is. And we weren't the only ones. Even the liberal Kyle Kalinske pointed out, I was like, look, all the centrist corporate people they say have the highest credibility, and all the people who are more independent they say don't have high credibility. So anyway, but let's get back to the video.
Polling, and then any one poll can be an outlier, but there have been a lot of polls that indicate that this, if it's a Trump-Biden rematch, this is going to be a close election. And again, that stupefies me. It should not be a close election. There is no way that any substantial portion of the electorate should support Donald Trump after we saw during what we saw during the 4 years of Donald Trump's presidency, after what we have seen in the years since Donald Trump's presidency, after all the felony criminal charges filed against him in 4 cases with what is basically open and shut evidence. The man is an accused felon. 91 times or something like that, and the total number of
they're in shambles, man. You keep playing. I was like, they're in shambles.
Potentially 46% of Americans are willing to return him to the White House. It certainly lays out what this poll, I think, does. It should lay out to Democrats that this is going to be a close election. They can't take anything for granted. They should assume it's going to be decided by perhaps tens of thousands of voters in the swing states that we all know.
Now you see why Cornel West's campaign has become even more important for a movement, Nick. This is why I say all the time, absolutely, this shit is such a perfect storm, Nick. This is such a perfect storm because I could not even conjure up a more perfect candidate than Cornel West for the Green Party. And this moment, he has so much respect for all these people that bring him on the show. They really can't even really do anything. They can't really combat him. And then now when he comes and he gets his sort of interview skills sharpened, when he comes on this show and he comes on all these independent shows, the Black Power Network, he gets these suggestions and he goes back on these networks and he looks better in his interviewing. The more he's doing it, they are terrified, Nick. They are terrified, especially after this right here. Now, you can expect the smears on Cornel West. You're going to start hearing stuff back when he was 6 years old, how he was bullying somebody when he was 6. Watch. It's about to come out because this is it. Like, they know, look, Wall Street Journal. Oh, this is real shit right here. Wall Street Journal was saying 46. And if Wall Street Journal was saying it, guess what? In real life, Donald Trump is likely winning. Donald Trump is likely winning if the Wall Street Journal, these liberal outlets, are polling even. He is likely winning because they're underpolling his people.
And then the electoral college, all that stuff. So, absolutely fantastic analysis. We can continue.
All know about, and they better get cracking now because there's a real risk. And I can't believe I'm saying this. There's a risk that Donald Trump could return to the White House.
There is a real risk, and he says, "I can't believe I'm saying this." Not that they knew this all along. This is why they've been pushing this so much propaganda. The reason they have to acknowledge it to their audience, Nick. They can no longer stop pretending this is a fantasy world. He's going to walk. He's going to beat him. He's beat him before. He's going to beat him again. This is easy. He's a cakewalk. And all this trying to, Ron DeSantis and look at Chris Christie. No, now they have to say, I can't. That's why he says, I can't believe I'm saying this. Donald Trump may be elected again, even after all. Because how are you meshing his indictments with the election unless you're meaning the indictments to affect the election? You get what I'm saying? But you're trying to tell us it's not political.
CJ,
doesn't make sense. Go ahead.
This shit is so critical for them. They threw the bag at Crystal and Kyle and all these progressives. And we show you guys the old clips of Crystal advocating against succumbing to the lesser two evils. And then after we did our breakdown and after my viral tweet calling her out, there are a lot of people who used to support Crystal Ball like, holy shit, I can't believe she changed so much. It gives you whiplash to see someone so aggressively sell out. The establishment is so afraid they did whatever they could to recruit her on their side. They got Kyle Kulinski, who we show his old rant saying why he wouldn't support the Democratic Party. Now he's a straight up Democratic simp. So they did everything they can. They got Gen Z kids running out here. They got the Voss Media Industrial Complex running. They threw everything they could at this possible Trump thing and stopping third parties, and they are still failing, fam. What extremely interesting times. And it feels so good to be liberated from giving a shit about who wins, because no matter who loses, I'm gonna laugh at. Like if Biden loses, I'm laughing at these morons, right? And if Trump loses, I'm laughing at the morons at MAGA that drive me crazy. There's no stress. And if I was on both sides, like I see a lot of MAGA people especially, they're like, yeah, nigga, Biden going down. Nigga, why y'all so sure? Like, I'll be nervous as shit if I was you guys in this clown-like system. But anyway, go ahead, CJ.
And to your point, and to those that might be watching who's still kind of voting red, blue, to the point, imagine not having the stress. Not having to fight a liberal, not having to fight a Trump supporter because of the other side. Imagine not going through that stress, but you're still helping your community, but you're still participating in community mutual aid that is helping your community. Instead of sending that $100 to the Democratic Party, you're sending it to Rome to help build a community library where he's going to house people. He's going to allow people to come in and poor people to unhoused people to come in and take, for instance, showers. He's going to have radical books in there where kids can come after school programs. So much stuff. You see how it's like we're helping our community regardless. Who cares is in there? Who cares who's elected? Who cares I'm gonna be helping and raising money for a diaper run. I'm gonna be helping and raising money for school supplies. Like nothing changes because of these clowns and their show. It doesn't make any difference. So you can live that life if you're watching and you're part of the red blue game. Get out of this nonsense. It's really relieve stress. Like get out of it. That's my recommendation. But back,
this is a great super track by Frank. I'll read it real quick and I'll pass it to you. Thanks for the 499. The whole segment is about Trump. Not one mention of what people are really dealing with in this country right now. And that's such an important point, especially when I show you guys the clip I have, where they're like, what can we do to get black people on side with the Democratic Party? What can we do to get Latinos on side with the Democratic Party? They never ask, what can the Democratic Party do for black people to get them on their side? It's always, what can we do for them? What can you do for the massa? Never, oh my God, Trump is tied with Biden. Trump is such an existential threat. Trump can end our democracy. And since he's such a threat, we need to give the workers what they want so we can defeat them. You know how that narrative framing? Even if you're a hardcore class warrior capitalist, you like, nigga, I want to wage class war against the workers. I want to crush these motherfucking unions. But Trump is such a threat to our democracy. Let's give him one. You guys know they don't do that. That's how you know they don't truly believe Trump is a threat, right? People, let's continue. Great super chat. And a fantastic super chat, Frank. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Frank. All right, back to the video. And then just notice the states. And I believe Cornel West is on the ballot. I know New York, I believe DC and Florida. I'm not sure about Georgia. I could be wrong. So these are states because this is where leverage becomes. This is where you can see the leverage. I'm sorry to rant again, Nick. This is where you can see potential leverage in building outside of the party. They're talking about a race that is so close, and he's saying this is decided by tens of thousands. You see how much power you can build by that? Look at these clowns. They're running neck and neck. They're running neck and neck while we're building outside of it. They're going to eventually have to pander to us to a certain extent just to get, just to remain in their, to play their own sort of blue-red game. So, but let's continue with the video. I'll keep running, but let's continue.
Well, and there is such a disconnect, Catty K, between the polling numbers and the reality. And a lot of Democrats are trying to figure out exactly why that is. You look inside the poll, a large number of Democrats just say Joe Biden's too old. He's too old. The numbers don't add up, though. Like, for instance, you look at the economic numbers, for instance. You go down.
That is a statement of an unhinged conspiracy theorist. Of someone whose mind is completely broken. Mediaite ranked these people as one of the most reliable news outlets. CJ, do you mind playing the last 15 seconds again? You guys listen to what you guys said. You guys said the numbers are not real. People, oh my God, there must be some disconnect. I can't understand what's going on. Like he sounds like Marianne Williamson in a way. Well, you got your perspective. I got my perspective. He's in a completely different universe. And I want to, and I'm sorry to play this part again, but I really want to emphasize what he says here. Like, you don't get propaganda like this in other places. Listen to this part again, CJ. I just want to emphasize this. This is unhinged.
And he can't fathom that what he thinks of as something is not what you peasants think of something. That's what he can't fathom. But let's continue here.
Think about the ego of that. But let's continue.
They're trying to figure out exactly why that is. You look inside the poll, a large number of Democrats just say Joe Biden's too old. He's too
my bad. Let's go back. Right here. Let's see.
Thousands of voters.
I just want you guys to hear
swing states that we all know about.
Like they shit on Trump supporters for denying facts, don't they? But listen to this.
Cracking now because there's a real risk, and I can't believe I'm saying this. There's a risk that Donald Trump could return to the White House.
He's down there.
There's such a disconnect, Catty K, between the polling numbers and the reality, and a lot of Democrats are trying to figure out exactly why that is. You look
between the polling numbers and reality. Why aren't people listening to our propaganda? I don't care what the facts say. Our propaganda is reality. That is unhinged Orwellian shit right there. what we say on news, our propaganda, the propaganda of one party is what's something that everyone should take as fact. That's a crazy ideology. But anyway, let's continue today.
That's a good catch. I kind of want to hear that one more time because I was talking over it a little bit. So let's go back just a few.
Listen.
I gotta get precise.
To say this. Like you got polls that showing that your position is getting blown the fuck out, and instead of like, what am I wrong about? What am I misunderstanding? What am I not gonna? Instead of saying that, he said, "Oh my God, people are completely misrepresenting the reality of my politics." It's unbelievable hubris in a lot of ways. But let's continue.
There's a real risk, and I can't believe I'm saying this. There's a risk that Donald Trump could return to the White House.
Well, and there is such a disconnect, Katty K, between the polling numbers and the reality. And a lot of Democrats are trying to figure out exactly why that is. You look inside the poll, a large number of Democrats just say Joe Biden's too old. He's too old. The numbers don't add up, though. Like, for instance, you look at the economic numbers, for instance. You go down the list, going into Labor Day weekend, Wall Street Journal headline, resilient U.S. economy defies expectations. That's in Rupert Murdoch's.
Why won't people believe the bourgeoisie headlines? Listen to people that he cites as people we should take as fact. Listen to people he cites. Listen, he said Wall Street Journal. You guys probably missed it, but first he said Wall Street Journal, and now let's continue. Listen to people that he wants us to take at face value.
What I love about this particular part of the polling, the economic part of it, is that it's showing a couple of things. One, the indicators that they tell us indicates or shows a strong economy has nothing to do with workers. It has zero indication on the status of what the conditions of workers. Their indicators, Wall Street, for example, Wall Street's up. What does that have to do with us?
Exactly.
How does Wall Street being up have to do with us? We don't own stock. 84% of stock is owned by the 1%, and but 100% is controlled by them. So the little 16% or so that we have in our 401k, it's still controlled by the people who control the 84%. So we don't control any of it. But they're trying to act like that's an indicator. But go ahead. And I'm sorry, one more thing. When they keep saying unemployment, unemployment is not an indicator of good because guess who was all employed during slavery, Nick? Guess who was employed, Nick?
Yep.
All the slaves were employed, so we had 100% employment. You see how that's an indication for the owner, not the worker. That doesn't tell us the condition of the worker. Go ahead, Nick.
So
sorry, Ren.
Your point, no, CJ, your point is fantastic because it's either this segment or the segment I'm going to show you next, where you're going to see Joe Scarborough shits on the economy of China. When he's talking about the United States, he's like, man, the United States economy is performing strongly. We're exceeding expectations. But meanwhile, they're like, China's damn near in a recession. What indicators are you guys using? China just announced a program where they are about to greatly expand high-speed rail. I didn't get a chance to really report on this, but Xi Jinping gave us a great address. Like, we have this massive infrastructure program that we are building on. That plus the new infrastructure projects we have going on in Africa and our international partners. We have a record amount of young people that own homes in China. So God knows what metric they use. I probably got to read more into it. But they're probably looking at China's GDP growth is down. So the economy is struggling. Meanwhile, the average rent in China is $400-$500. Xi Jinping was talking about how their healthcare system is flowing more efficiently than ever before. You got infrastructure projects that is exceeding expectations in China. So what metrics are they using?
They're retiring at 54. Retiring at 54. I saw that on your shit. I saw that on your tweet.
I'm glad you brought that up because that's another important metric. They want workers in the United States to work until they're 70 plus years old. You literally have Republicans and some Democrats openly advocating for that. Meanwhile, the Chinese retirement age is 54. Isn't that an indicator of how strong your economy is? Whether your workers can retire or fucking not? Anyway, I don't want to belabor the point because I may cover this more when they get to that point in my segment.
Yeah.
So let's continue, CJ.
Yes, sir. Let's go here.
Other Wall Street Journal articles, they talk about strong job numbers, that wages are outpacing inflation, that Americans
you a damn lie to say wages are outpacing inflation. How dare you? They don't have any more. You got to fact check that, Nick. Wages outpacing inflation. Get the fuck out of it. I mean, he's using some sort of magical like accounting to even say that. Like if you were to break that down, there's no way.
Even going by I was saying, even going by their metrics, I agree with you 100%. That's bullshit. No matter what number they pull up, but I think even going by their metric, I think he's lying there. But I gotta check that. I gotta look that up. Even going by their bullshit, I don't think that's true.
He's probably making it up.
But we know with our lived experience, we know with talking to our neighbors. Like I had a great conversation with quite a few families who can't even afford school supplies. I literally planning another event I didn't plan before to help people get clothes because quite a few people said, "Hey, yeah, school supplies is good, but I can't put clothes on my kid." Now, meanwhile, these people talking about how great the economy is, and they talking about how great wages are going up. That is not what we are seeing and feeling in our community. And what did I say before, CJ? Why do we owe the ruling class a benefit of the doubt? They're like, well, if you don't feel it, come on, look at the economy doing better. If you do not feel the economy is doing better, you do not owe them your vote. You don't have to look at GDP. It's not upon you. Like, oh my God, look at the amount of small businesses that grown. If your life does not change, improve, you do not owe them a vote. Period. I don't care what fucking numbers they show you. But anyway, let's continue, CJ.
That's a great point, Nick. And a few more minutes of this, and then it's a shorter, just a couple of brief minutes in another segment that I'll play. That's more about Joe Biden because it's kind of meshed together. This is about both of them, Joe Biden and Trump, and just the cope of what's happening and talking about how bad Trump is. So this is more of
CJ.
Yeah. Do whatever you want to do
after this because it may be the same thing. Just
yes, absolutely, just in case.
But I'll pass you.
Yeah, so let's listen a little more how they talk a little more about some of the other polling, and then we'll get to your clip just in case.
Are getting, quote, another raise because of this economy. Another Wall Street Journal. Again, I'm sorry, Republicans. Rupert Murdoch's Wall Street Journal. There's another Wall Street Journal article recently that talks about how, despite what every economist has been saying over the past couple of years, the United States economy looks like it's going to be able to stick the landing. It's going to have a smooth recovery without a recession. Again, all good news, but there's this massive disconnect. And you look at people giving disapproval, high disapproval numbers.
I'm glad you showed
this
this
part.
I'm glad.
This is the part that they can't. This is the part, the 46, but this 30. Where'd it go? Oh, this 37% on the economy, the approval, and the disapproval 59. They understand that like economy shit, people paying more money, that's not something you can overcome. That's very hard to overcome if you're the sitting president and the economy is terrible, or at least what they want to call perception. This is facts for people. This is facts. They think just because, for example, oh, you're doing well, you're living in a house. Really? I had to move in with my cousins. I had to move in over here. That's just because I'm not on the streets. That doesn't mean I'm not doing well. My rent is up, so I'm not, you know what I mean? Just because you don't see like people in lines at, food pantries, even though you do, but I'm just saying, like, if you don't see these extreme things that they're trying to say would be indications, they're trying to say, well, everything must be going good.
Yeah, and
just because people are learning to cope with capitalism, we've been through this nonsense. Go ahead, Nick.
And to your point, CJ, it's even more absurd when you realize that they are sheltered by their own class bubble. So these millionaires, like, and Bill Maher recently did this, and he one of the few people in the universe that can make Marianne Williamson look like a leftist god. Like, Bill Maher made Marianne Williamson like fucking Malcolm X. That's how bad she is. Because he was like, I don't see any poor people. I don't see any of them around. And Morning Joe essentially doing the same thing. I don't see any poor people. I don't see them around. Morning Joe, who make $10 million a year. Actually, I think he made more than that, but you guys get the point. Make tens of millions of dollars a year. And they like, I don't see poor people. There must be a disconnect. Meanwhile, we look around the community like, what the hell y'all talking about? I'm like, I don't talk about this a lot, but like, fam, I'm like the only person in my immediate family that has like a working car. Like right now, like, we got my siblings and my cousin. They got like a car rotation thing going. My brother fucking damn near hurt his knees fixing my mother's van. So is that an indicator? How many people got functioning fucking cars? We don't have public transportation. I live in the Midwest outside the city. So there's no public transportation. Motherfuckers struggling to get around, fam. My other brother just got his car. We're like, holy shit, thank God he finally got a car. Like, does this count to these people? Does this count to these people? Because their perspective, of course, is going to be different than ours. But media is going to tell people they're more reliable than us because their class perspective is more important than ours, according to media and other people. But anyway, CJ, let's continue because this is a part I saw as well, and this is pure cope and this is also a part I mentioned earlier in my earlier rant where they pretend Morning Joe is not propaganda. Meanwhile, this is Joe Scarborough, and this is what he's about to say right now. He's essentially saying, "Yeah, I know the American people disagree with Biden on different issues, right? But you're wrong. He's great on every fucking thing." And wait till you get to point. Joe Scarborough is going to explain how Joe Biden is great on literally every fucking issue, and you're just wrong. But let's play so you guys see what I'm talking about.
There we go here.
On the economy, 37% approve, 59% disapprove. Caddy, in other polls, 74% of Americans say that their economic situation is good. You look at inflation, the numbers are upside down.
So once again, as you see, he's going to go through every single thing on this list and tell you why you're wrong about it regarding Biden. But meanwhile, media thinks that Morning Joe does unbiased, non-propaganda news. You got a news anchor that is unapologetically shilling for one party, but they're the reliable news source, not RBN. Guys, they don't understand how much they fucked up because I'm going to keep quoting that shit, and you guys see why it's important. You guys see why it's so important that we do propaganda report, fam. So you guys see how absurd it is that other people will even rank them as credible. Media, you don't see what we see right now. Are you seriously don't see that Joe Scarborough is doing unhinged propaganda for one party? Anyway, sorry for that rant. Let's continue.
Inflation is cooling. It's just absolutely incredible. In improving infrastructure, he passes a bipartisan infrastructure bill, like a massive record-breaking infrastructure bill. He's upside down there. I mean, dealing with China, he's been tougher on China than any
I did not realize
president.
something I didn't realize the first time I seen this. You guys see how he skips securing the border? Like, he talking about inflation, like inflation ain't great. And then he passed the infrastructure bill. Well, hold on. What about the secure the border part? Because that's something that even I've seen Democrats criticize Biden on. Because it is.
I didn't notice that.
So I just now know that for the first time. He just skips over that part straight up. So he can't even admit on one L that Biden has. Because the reason why Biden's number so bad on securing the border, because he pissed everyone off. People on the right is pissed off, even though they probably shouldn't be as much. But then people on the left is pissed off because he's funding ICE more. So who's your constituency here on immigration? It's only that 30% that is unmovable. We talked about this before on the show. You guys gotta understand statistics in this country. In this country, there will always be 30%, around 25 to 30% that will always be unmovable, right? So when your number at 30%, that is horrible because that means the only people who support you are the most diehard partisans. So Joe just skips over that part. Anyway, let's continue some more.
Again, we talk about it all the time. What we've been doing with our security partners in the Philippines, in Japan, in South Korea, in Australia, on and on. We could go down the entire
when we
list.
say nuclear submarines,
Like, how is that an accomplishment? How is that something for the American people to judge him as a good thing? Like, what is that doing for us? I don't understand the expectation. I don't understand the expectation, but this is what they think of you, people. And I mean people, our audience. This is what they think of you. When you do not respond to their propaganda, they chastise you as being stupid. It's a disconnect because you're dumb and we're smart and you're not buying what we're selling you. That's essentially the line that they give us.
I just decided I'm gonna comment on in detail after you're done. But what you guys see here is why we do propaganda report on Morning Joe. Morning Joe is top of his fucking game when it comes to propaganda, and that's why he has the respect of the establishment and Mediaite. There's a reason why Mediaite ranks him as the most reliable. Remember, flip the chart. They're saying that Joe Scarborough is the most effective propagandist. So I'm actually gonna let this whole thing play because he is such a great propagandist. He fits so much bullshit in such a short amount of time. I'm like, all right, I gotta let it play some more because he just praised Joe Biden for sending nuclear submarines to Australia in order to escalate against China. You guys realize that what he just said, right? But I can't stop it for everything he says. So I'm going to let it play and I'll give my thoughts afterwards. But I want you guys to pay attention to how good he is at fitting so much bullshit in such a short amount of time. So, CJ, if you don't mind, go back just slightly and I'm going to let it play. Just look at what he pulls off here. It's actually quite spectacular, like in terms of a propagandist perspective. Listen to this.
It's about 30 seconds backwards. So here we go.
In improving infrastructure, he passes a bipartisan infrastructure bill, like a massive record-breaking infrastructure bill. He's upside down there. I mean, dealing with China, he's been tougher on China than any president. You look again, we talked about it all the time, what we've been doing with our security partners in the Philippines, in Japan, in South Korea, in Australia, on and on. We could go down the entire list.
The reason he's telling you without specifically telling you what the ruling class thinks of China. When you're talking about dealing with China, why are you interpreting that, Morning Joe, as to mean placing weapons in Australia? Why are you classifying dealing with China as war, preparing for war with them, as that's supposed to be a good thing? You see how he's telling you that?
Absolutely.
He's naming that has nothing to do with China in this small, narrow poll. What if the person who is taking the poll, when they say how he's dealing with China, what if they're talking about economically? You see how he reads it? He's telling you without telling you what they think, what a good strategy towards China should be. And he is saying it is a march towards war. That is what Joe Scarborough is saying. Go ahead.
That's a great point, CJ, because that's kind of what I want to break down as well. So that's a great point because he mentioned the nuclear submarines in Australia. He talked about building military alliances between the Philippines and Japan, where Japan literally increased the military budget by 60%, a historic military budget expansion because the United States is trying to train and get Japan and Australia ready to wage war against China, which will completely destabilize and destroy the working class of the world. Do you guys understand that? But he's cheering that on as a good thing. Yeah. So this whole spill is unhinged, but you guys see how Morning Joe can mix these unhinged neocon propaganda in there. And he had people like Mediaite and other liberals just nodding along with this. And you guys wonder why you have all these liberals who are unhinged neocons now. That's why George Takei calls people traitors for not supporting the Ukraine war. He criticized people who criticize Ukraine funding in comparison to what money we get in our community because he's been radicalized by Morning Joe. Liberals in the Democratic Party have been radicalized by CNN, MSNBC, New York Times, Washington Post, and their pro-war propaganda. But let's continue.
Absolutely. Here we go.
And the numbers don't add up, Caddy. And a lot of Democrats are saying it's because he's too old. That's what's underlying this entire poll is Joe Biden's numbers are low because right now Americans think he's too old to do the job.
Yeah, I wrote a piece about this in the BBC saying this is the Alice in Wonderland election. What's up is down and what's down is up, because none of it seems to make sense.
They are truly offended. They are truly offended that people are buying their propaganda. Up is down, down is up. Like, that's literally what you're trying to convince people. You're trying to convince people up is down, down is up. And we're saying, no, it's not. And they're saying, what's wrong with everybody? What the hell's going on here? And it is truly baffling them. And this is why, Nick, at the same time, they're trying to increase censorship. This is why we're getting strikes. This is why, Nick, this is why we're appearing in Mediaite.com. Why? Yeah. Because their narrative, they've lost control of the narrative. Go ahead, Nick. I know you want to chime in.
And I don't know if you guys caught that in the beginning, but of course she writes for the BBC. Because we did enough propaganda reports where we've seen this lady on quite a few times. She's one of the most unhinged propagandist guests they bring on. Like, she's here to toe the Democratic Party empire line. So, of course, she writes for BBC. So, whenever I say the United States is the most propagandized country in the world, you know who the only people who stump me? When people say, what about the UK? What about the BBC? I'm like, yeah, good point. I still think ours is more. I think ours is worse, but good 1A, 1B. You know what I mean? So, of course, she writes in the BBC, and then she writes an article in the BBC explaining how the Americans are dumbasses who don't understand and they don't acknowledge how great Joe Biden is. Why won't Americans acknowledge Joe Biden? Unbelievable. Anyway, let's continue.
Yeah, that's it.
Here you have Donald Trump with a slew of indictments against him, and yet he's soaring in the Republican primary polls. And
this is another one I saw online. It's pissing them off, liberals. I saw tweets. I can't remember where it was from, but this one right here is another one where it's like, wow, because he's the same age or 3 years apart. So to them, this is in the same age sort of range. So why is it almost twice the amount? Close to being twice the amount, because they are just saying age, but it's more than that, because clearly people are judging what they physically see, Nick, and they're labeling it all age. They physically see that Donald Trump sounds the same, that he sounded 10 years ago. He's walking the same. He's not. Yeah. And then Joe Biden does not. Like, we can clearly see that. That's why it's such a lopsided poll there. But go ahead, Nick, if you wanted to.
No, to your point, and they're gonna explain why don't you're gonna see it right now? Why don't people view Donald Trump as being too old? And Joe Biden's only 3 years older than him? Because I told you guys many times, I find Trump deeply unimpressive. Especially in 2016, especially in 2020. I view him mostly as an incoherent moron for the most part. But and remember in the town hall, he is way more well-defined as a politician. Not great, but he had like quick retorts. He didn't used to have that. He used to kind of like ramble. And then he would like stumble upon a comedic gold mine. You know what I mean? That resonate among people. But he wasn't like a sharp, witty politician. At the CNN town hall, remember, he had rebukes ready for everything she said. And he high-key dismantled that CNN host. And that is not something now I don't believe that Trump could have did in 2016 and 2020. So what I am saying is Trump, I see improvements. With Biden, he clearly declined. And people may be shocked by this, but Biden, in my view, when I look at the old Senate floor speeches, he was an extremely charismatic politician, fam. To me, he sounded like an evil villain. That's what I said on the Jimmy Dore show one day. When you look at his old Senate floor speeches, he like a James Bond villain.
Yeah.
I'm gonna increase civil asset forfeiture. Let's pass this crime bill to pass mandatory minimums. Like, if you guys want to hear a real villain speech, look up his old Senate floor speech when he's talking about expanding mandatory minimums. One of the most evil shit I ever heard in my life. Anyway, I'll let it continue, but I'll let you guys look that up if you guys are interested. But go ahead, CJ.
And Joe Biden, with an economy, as you say, you've got, unemployment at 3.8%. It's just ticked up a little bit, but it's still low. Inflation coming back down to 3%. Incredibly low by the standards of certainly of most Western countries, where it's up at 6, 7, 8%. So America is really doing much better economically. And why is it that people aren't feeling this? I mean, partly, yes, interest rates are higher, and that is hurting people, some people, and prices are still higher than they were before COVID. And I guess people are still feeling some of that. But I think you're right that there is the age factor is playing into
you
this.
just debunked your argument.
And I know how frustrated the White House is.
Yeah, I didn't get why she said all of that.
You just debunked your argument immediately. Yeah, I know people. Yeah, interest rates are. I know people have a hard time foreign groceries. Yeah, I know people struggling, but the economy's great. Like, you just dismantled your entire argument. Play that part again, CJ. Go back. Hit the 15 second plan. I want you guys to watch her dismantle her own argument in real time, because what she says there overwrites all the other bullshit stats you just read out. I don't care about all these bullshit numbers. How do people feel when it comes to buying their groceries, paying their rent, for example? Let's watch this part again. Another damning part.
Back down to 3%. Incredibly low by the standards of certainly of most Western countries, where it's up at 6, 7, 8%. So America is really doing much better economically. And why is it that people aren't feeling this? I mean, partly, yes, interest rates are higher, and that is hurting people, some people, and prices are still higher than they were before COVID. And I guess people are still feeling some of that.
Prices are still higher.
But I think you're right that there is the age factor is playing into this. And I know how frustrated the White House is on both of those counts. They hope that by sending Joe Biden out around the country, and that once more of the money that has actually been pledged in things like the CHIPS Act and the IRA actually gets out into projects around the country, then maybe they'll start to see some kind of return in terms of the polls. But the age.
Like, you guys see why there's levels to this shit, fam. You guys see how she immediately contradicts herself. Like, she's struggling here. Joe Scarborough ran through that list like a propaganda ace, fam. He's horrible at that. The black guy at the bottom middle, he's also horrible too. But it's not smooth. It's not believable. But let's continue.
The age factor, Joe Biden can try and joke about it, but it's still a looming factor. And when Mitch McConnell has incidents like he had over the weekend, like he had a couple of weeks ago, then that doesn't help the president either, because it raises again the idea that just there's a group of leadership at the top that is where there is an age question about everybody, and he's just going to have to keep stating the numbers like you just have in terms of the economy, and hoping that the American public starts giving him some recognition for an economy that is doing better than almost any Western economy in the world.
You guys see the framing?
Well, I mean,
are you talking about the Western economies in Europe that are feeling the effects of the war in Ukraine?
Yes.
Is that who you're comparing this to? Go ahead. Terrible.
But remember what we mentioned at the very beginning of the stream regarding the context? Why won't the American people fall behind Joe Biden's rhetoric? What can Joe Biden do to trick these people? Instead of, why don't Joe Biden pass policy to improve these people's lives? It's all about the workers being true. How can they change their messaging? It's so disgusting. That shows their class bias. But Mediaite ranks them as one of the most reliable news outlets. And they have class warfare oozing all over them. They watch this shit like, nigga, this is real news. Yeah, nigga, fuck those workers. Yeah, but yeah, prices are higher, nigga, but they do. You better accept this economy. They are fucking clowns, fam. But let's continue. There's still quite a bit to get to. Let's continue.
Yeah. All right.
And you look at the news front page of the New York Times today, China's economy really teetering on the brink of
look, that's what I'm talking
massive
about.
recession right now. We're doing China, Russia, please. Even our European allies. Our economy is doing better than just about any economy in the world. And yet, again, there's this massive disconnect. And you go into these poll numbers, and the massive disconnect comes from.
He's trying to say that the United States is doing better than China. Is that what he's really? That's not what he's saying, Nick.
Yes,
that's not what he's saying.
I kind of spoiled this earlier because I saw that part. I spoiled this earlier. Remember, I told you guys, while they're trying to say, oh, the Biden economy, when they talk about the Biden economy is doing better than expected. Biden economy is doing better than expected. Meanwhile, China's economy on the brink of destruction. You guys see the difference in the language? Like, who do you think you're fooling? Who do you think you're fooling? They're teetering on the brink. They're completely different languages there. It's unbelievable. And once again, how do you rate how great your economy is doing? How great the economy is? Xi just gave an amazing address last year when they had a new Congress, talking about all these amazing infrastructure programs they had approved, all these new buildings they was working on, high-speed road upgrades. And in fact, the average Chinese person rent is around $400, $500. The quality of life there is cheaper than ever. People are thriving there. You have young people who own their homes. Isn't that something that you should be counting? How many people own their fucking homes? You know what else they should count, CJ? How many people are hungry? America, there's a ton of people hungry. Especially in Lula, they've been working on initiatives to end hunger. And the Chinese government has lifted a record amount of people out of poverty, and they are feeding people at a higher rate than the United States. That's the number one thing you should be rating. How many homeless people do you see in China? Do they got skid rows in China? No. So what are you judging your economy? Where your compare and contrast coming from? Just propaganda. But anyway, let's continue. Oh yeah, there's another one good. Thank you for this comment, Desert Mantis. You should also look at how many people are happy. Another great point. Anyway, let's continue.
The central problem, we got to go to Lemire, and because he's obviously been closest to this. We were going to go to break because we have Frank Four on the other side of this, who's written a book about Biden. But John, we got to bring you in here, man. I mean, the White House doesn't want to talk about age. I understand, but it colors everything. It colors everything. If you look at what he's done in foreign policy, you look at how the economy's going right now. These are numbers that should be giving any president a huge lift, and it's just not happening here.
No, and the White House, they are aware of this, and the DNC is aware of this. The re-election campaign is aware of this, and they point out with some frustration that Donald Trump is only 3 years younger than Joe Biden.
Exactly.
But yet that Wall Street Journal poll suggests, though, that
exactly.
There you see it.
Mika's so fucking annoying. Exactly. She was so happy. She was so happy to hear that point. Oh man, it's now funny. Exactly.
Of those respondents say Biden is too old. Only 47% say that Trump is, and this is a lingering, sort of baked-in perception now, and that's something they were trying to overcome. Now, we should note this poll, relatively small sample. It's also done by one of the pollsters involved was sort of a Trump-affiliated Manafort group, Tony Fabrizio.
So now we got to question the poll. Now we have to question the poll. Isn't that what Trump does? What did they say when Trump would question those polls? Oh yeah, that's fake news. Oh, he's questioning this and look at that. Now you guys are questioning the poll. Because this is what you're trying to say. It's the same thing they do with judges. Are you saying because somebody appointed them that they can't be fair? Then how can we have any fairness at all? Because either it's you or them appointing them. But they're saying is no. When we appoint, it's fair. When they appoint, it's not fair. As essentially, and when we get elected, it's democracy. When they get elected, it's Russian interference. But let's continue.
So let's put that aside, though, as we look at this. It is just one poll, but it's something this White House. But the overall metrics are consistent with what we've heard with others. Age is a concern. Now, the White House looks at the other side of this, and they point to all these issues where they feel like the economy is improving. And though poll after poll suggests Americans don't feel great about it, there's underlying numbers that Americans at the same time say, well, I actually have a little more money in my pocket than I used to. Hey, I can go on a vacation now. I couldn't do that a year ago.
Right.
And they feel like that's coming. They think that'll come to the surface sometime next year, twinned with the impact of the Inflation Reduction Act and the infrastructure bill. And Americans next year will feel better about the economy. They also...
That's fantasy talk. Like, you notice, so that particular party said, that's not to us. That's not to regular people like us, Nick. He's talking to the ruling class. Calm down, guys. Calm down. Yes, this looks bad, but we're hoping with the effects of the Inflation Reduction Act, because people like us know the Inflation Reduction Act is bullshit. People that listen to their show thinks it's actually something. So hold on. We still got this. We still got that. They're still trying to give hope. I don't get it. Do you think they're going to pivot from Joe Biden? A lot of people think Joe Biden's not going to be the nominee. A lot of people think it's over for Joe Biden. That's why we're seeing more and more of these conversations like this segment, even this segment, where they're talking about all the problems he's having. Even the allowing that on the air is an indication that it is a possibility that he's going to be replaced by a Gavin Newsom or somebody along those lines. We can close that particular segment. You can play your clip. Yeah.
No. I checked, and that clip was included in that video. So I'm
mine too. Yes, I don't need anything else. We can move to your story.
My next story, we are continuing our propaganda report. Let's cover some foreign policy. So why do I say the United States is the most propagandized country in the world? Right? I don't know. It's a very simple concept. CNN will bring people on like John Bolton to talk about foreign policy with zero pushback. That's why we're the most propagandized country in the world. So they were trying to slam up Vivek. Vivek Ramaswamy is someone that they cannot stand now, fam. And it's very, very frustrating to see, fam, to be honest, because I dismantled Vivek's foreign policy. But the heat that Vivek Ramaswamy is getting, the heat that he's receiving from the corporate media, that should have been the Bernie Sanders left, standing up and speaking truth to the empire, forcing him to run segments like these. I've seen quite a few of them. But this is the funniest one because they bring on John Bolton to talk about foreign policy. And there's going to be a lot to break down here because John Bolton sounds like an unhinged psychopath throughout the course of this entire 10-minute interview. So let me play here. The most obvious ironic thing in the first take that you will have seeing this, because you look at the title here, is that Vivek Ramaswamy refuses to say whether Putin is a war criminal. Hear John Bolton's reaction. So CNN brings on a guy who is a war criminal to talk about the fact that Vivek won't criticize a war criminal.
That's
this is amazing. Amazing shit that this is historic, once in a generation shit that we're seeing here. And I swear to God, whoever manages CNN's YouTube channel must have a sense of humor. That's why they said, they said, hear John Bolton's reaction. Almost like they point out immediately how absurd it is to bring this guy on and talk about foreign policy. So let's listen here. And there's going to be a lot of
former Trump National Security Advisor John Bolton. Ambassador Bolton, thanks for joining us. The actual news itself, the possibility of a meeting between Kim Jong-un and President Putin and Kim leaving North Korea to travel to Russia, what does that tell you?
Well, I think this is a big win for Kim Jong-un and the North Koreans in virtually every respect, certainly in the PR aspect of it, but in the ties that it will help increase between North Korea and Russia. It's mutually beneficial to both, in Russia getting weapons and ammunition. It opens the possibility.
Nick, can you pause it? Let me say this before I forget.
Yeah, go ahead.
We have to. This is why it is such an important thing that RBN is here, and maybe you alluded to this a second ago. And the reason being, Nick, the people who our Constitution says should be calling out corruption in our government is in bed with them, to where, Nick, they are literally, Nick, bringing on a war criminal to give advice to their audience, Nick. They literally have people like he was a lobbyist for Norfolk Southern, the rail industry. He was on a panel on CNN to talk about this shit and didn't tell anybody he was one of the lobbyists. These are the types of things, Nick, that our corporate media is doing with no shame at all. A war criminal sits across from you and you're talking to him as an expert in something. That'd be like having a person who's not a doctor, or is a person who is a crazy doctor who's mutilating people, and you bringing them on as to be an expert doctor. What the hell is our media doing? What do they think of us? Who are they shielding for? Who are they here to serve? Not us. not the Constitution as they like to always want to refer to. But go ahead, Nick.
Stop calling John Bolton a hawk. A hawk is a noble, useful bird. Bolton is a war criminal. Now, I read it from this perspective because even people who are not left as us, people who even see hawks as somewhat admirable, even they are like, man, John Bolton is fucked up. I see people who are to our right on foreign policy that look at John Bolton like, what the? This guy is a psychopath. You gotta know John Bolton, as they talk about war criminals here, he literally threatened the war crimes court with sanctions. That's how unhinged he is. Meanwhile, they want us to, and they expect other countries to respect the ICC, calling for the arrest of Vladimir Putin. Meanwhile, John Bolton, like, if you even look at me, motherfucker, we will destroy you. So this is the guy that CNN brings on to critique someone else's foreign policy. So I'm gonna show you guys this real quick, and this is what they're reacting to. I think this is worth showing because this is a great segment explaining what's going on. Like, there's a massive military alliance that is being formed. There's military cooperation between Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea. But despite that, you have the Biden administration sending nuclear submarines to Australia, militarizing Japan in preparation for this conflict. That I literally need you to understand that we will lose this war. Chinese have way more people than we do. They have a larger navy than we do, and they are planning military cooperation between Iran, Russia, and North Korea. No matter, and I shouldn't, and to be honest, I probably shouldn't use the term win because no matter what happens, everyone loses. So I probably shouldn't do that. But it's going to be, I would say this, it's going to be horrific for the West. So this is what John Bolton is freaking out about, CJ. And if you look up Putin in the news right now, there are articles everywhere full of Western panic. So let me get back to this because this is what they are breaking down. Let me read this tweet and I'll get back to video. Breaking: North Korea leader Kim Jong-un will meet Putin in Russia to discuss new arms deal. Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea are already openly entering into military cooperation and arming each other. Most likely in the near future, we will see a new military alliance or a new Warsaw Pact that will compete with NATO. And guys, what caused this to happen? NATO escalation, U.S. sanctions on Russia that drove Russia and China closer together. Now Russia are reaching out to other enemies of the West. So now Russia is closer to Iran and North Korea than ever before. So explain to me more, Matt Duss, Bernie Sanders, and all these people who believe that Joe Biden did some 3D chess move by arming Nazis in Ukraine. The only thing he did, even coming from your perspective, is unite America's enemies against us. So congratulations, you amazing 3D chess players, Anthony Blinken and Lloyd Austin, the Biden administration. You guys did exactly what you guys accused Trump would do. And alienate our allies and destabilize the geopolitical world order. That is what Joe Biden did. So now let's watch John Bolton react to it.
Yeah.
Oh shit, let me switch back to the video.
It opens the possibility of a kind of conveyor belt. If China doesn't want to supply weapons directly, it can supply them to North Korea, and then lo and behold, they could then in turn be supplied to Russia. But from Kim's point of view, for years and years of being dependent on China, for example, people estimate North Korea gets 90% of its oil from China. Now he's got a real possibility to open up oil and gas coming from Russia. And in this complex relationship between Russia and China, while they're clearly growing closer and closer, Russia's worried about China's aspirations in the region. For example, the critical naval base and port city of Vladivostok, right to the east of North Korea, was ruled by China as recently as the mid-19th century. So Putin gains by tightening the relationship between North Korea and Russia. Kim Jong-un gains now by being able to play the two off against each other, as his grandfather used to do back in the days of the Cold War.
Absolutely
and overall, I think it's another example of the U.S. being asleep while significant geopolitical developments are underway.
Asleep, John Bolton? So Joe Biden literally creating military cooperation with Japan, Philippines, sending nuclear submarines to Australia, wrapping up propaganda, sending weapons to Taiwanese separatist groups. That's being asleep, according to John Bolton? So listen to what John Bolton said, because as that other article says, there are war hawks, there are neocons, there are war criminals, and then there are John Bolton, who is on a different tier of his own. Like, guys, do you understand how dangerous the world will be if this guy was in charge? Because now you guys probably asking yourself, if John Bolton thinks that Biden is asleep at the wheel, what do you think we should do? And even the CNN anchor is kind of confused, like, what do you think we should do then, Bolton? Like, she don't question him. She don't harshly push back, but she kind of perplexed. What do you think we should do then, sir? Let me play. Let's play. Listen, this segment is extremely interesting to me.
Think
why? But Nick, let me ask you this question: why, in particular, I noticed, or maybe it's a coincidence, I've noticed when they do reach out to him, is about particular things. One of them is North Korea. Is there a reason on North Korea they are fine with using him as an expert?
That's a great question, CJ. John Bolton, as you guys going to hear, is an insane North Korean war hawk. And if you guys want to know, that is what strained the relationship between him and Donald Trump. And John Bolton is very open about that. He was in the Trump White House freaking out when Donald Trump met with Kim Jong-un, that he was one of the vocal opponents that, as well as Mike Pompeo. And that eventually led John Bolton from splitting from Trump. So I don't want to spoil it here, because there's many neocons that have been wanting to wage genocide against the North Korean people in order to forcibly crush their communist movement led by the Jusei philosophy. So I don't want to spoil it. Listen to what he says here, and you see why they bring him up from North Korea. So I actually don't want to spoil it. Listen to what he says, because now after he says that Biden administration been asleep, the obvious follow-up question is, okay, what do you think they should do? And you're going to see the anchors ask them that question. So let's listen.
U.S. being asleep while significant geopolitical developments are underway.
You think the U.S. is asleep? You're talking about the Biden administration?
You see? She's like, what? So she asked him, like, yeah, do you think the Biden administration is not doing enough about this? So let's listen to his response.
Well, I'm talking about many Americans. I mean, look, I think the pursuit of the effort to get a nuclear deal with North Korea, now 3 decades long, has proven to be a complete waste of time. I think this recent story about Kim and Putin should tell us how significant it is that we focus on the end of North Korea, not dealing with North Korea, but the reunification of the peninsula.
So,
hold on. Do you guys know what he just called for?
The reunification of the peninsula?
He is calling for restarting the Korean War. What would that do with, what does that mean regarding North Korean allies? Do you guys think China will be, why do you guys think other presidents didn't do that crazy ass shit? There's a lot of consequences to restarting the Korean War, where the American Empire killed millions in the genocide, by the way. They're one of the things like, is it war or is it genocide? The North Korean people, and they are still salty to this day. The United States did not accomplish their objective. That's why there's still 2 North Koreas. And they are still salty about it to this day. They didn't achieve no objective in North Korea. What did I explain to you guys before? The United States military is trash that do not win war. What do? They commit genocide. If you guys want to know why North Korea is the way it is, especially when it comes to clamping down on information, the United States killed millions of Koreans. And in years after that, they suffered and they were starved by the United States apparatus. John Bolton is calling for a return to that. I want to play the part again. And this is probably the most unhinged thing we play in this whole live stream. Or anything you will hear this week. What he's calling for. Like, I want you guys to understand. George W. Bush Jr. didn't approach it this way. Barack Obama didn't approach it this way. Barack Obama was a hawk. Then Donald Trump did something that made John Bolton leave his administration when meeting with Kim Jong-un and trying to normalize relationships. Probably the one good thing that Trump did, foreign policy-wise, right? And that made John Bolton leave. And now Joe Biden and his administration are doubling down on harsh North Korean policies, doubling down on sanctions, escalating military deals. So listen to this part again and realize how unhinged this guy is. And CNN brings him on as an objective foreign policy analysis, but media believe they are more objective and they are not propaganda compared to RBN. Boy, they were already fucked up with that graph. They fucked up with that graph, CJ, because now I have even more reason to do. We have even more reasons to do propaganda report. Because now we show you guys these people are more reliable than us. We're propaganda, but what he's doing is not. Ooh, they fucked up putting us on that list, fam. Because now we get to show you guys how ridiculous that shit is. So listen to this part again, and I'll let play some more. And it gets even more on his. Like, we're only 2 minutes in. I'm trying to let play some more, especially when it gets to the Vivek Ramaswamy part, which is the original reason I put this up. But this part was so unhinged, I wanted to show you guys this as well. And this is why CNN, and this is why the United States is the most propagandized country in the world. This guy is brought on to spill unhinged garbage with no pushback.
I think this recent story about Kim and Putin should tell us how significant it is that we focus on the end of North Korea, not dealing with North Korea, but the reunification of the peninsula.
So, Ambassador Bolton, you talked about oil and what get.
Are you not going to say anything about that insanity he said, ma'am? He just said some crazy
ass. They participate. This is what I'm saying. These are the people who's supposed to be the ones. You get what I'm saying? Your job. This is not like, that's not my type. No, your job is to do this. This is literally your job. When you're talking about, when you guys refer to the forefathers who I saw, the founding colonizers, when you say this is your job, they said the press is the one who's supposed to be protecting or be a line of protection for the regular public, because you're reporting the corruption and pointing out the corruption to the public of the government. This is a former government official who has admitted to being a coup leader and planning coups, and you over here just chumming it up with him on CNN. No pushback, as he's saying, just completely unhinged, deranged shit. He looks the part too, Nick. I must say, if you're casting a movie, just cast him to play himself. Don't even do nobody else. He looks the part as an evil coup planner. Go ahead.
I saw one of my followers. I actually want to show you. This is funny. This is the guy that CNN brought on unironically here.
Now, you yourself have admitted to planning coups in other countries. What do you think Prigozhin's goal, his end game was?
Yes, sir. You are a notorious war criminal who planned coups in other countries, destabilizing their sovereignty in entire regions. But explain to me your opinion on this foreign policy. What the fuck?
Explain to me your opinion about this shit.
Yeah, I know you did some work on now. Tell me your opinion on what's your favorite sandwich. Guys, this is why it's so unbelievable.
It's ridiculous.
It's so unbelievable because media watching this shit unironically and think they're getting reliable news. I want to show you guys that. That's funny. Big shout. Who posted that in my mentions? Big shout out to Newsman for sharing that. Anyway, let's get back to the segment. That's the guy that CNN brought on again. So CJ, that clip I just played showed that they know what he has done, but they still bring him on. Crazy, right? But now this part actually funnier because I think he actually said something that's crazier, if I remember right. Now this led me to tweet about it. I did a live tweet. Now listen to this part again.
Dealing with North Korea, but the reunification of the peninsula.
So, Ambassador Bolton, you talked about oil and what getting oil from Russia could mean for North Korea, but what about the weapons technology that North Korea wants from Russia? If it gets what it wants on those fronts, what is the immediate risk to the West and the more long-term risk?
Well, I think North Korea has been receiving clandestine assistance on missiles and the nuclear programs from China and Russia for a long time. They used to admit
But
it.
no evidence. Can you pause it? No evidence
Yeah.
at all. I'm just gonna say some
Yep.
completely unhinged shit with
Yep.
no evidence. I wonder, did she push back on that, like to say, do you have any evidence of that, sir? Can you show me something? Because you just said
Yep.
something that's pretty crazy to say. It would be
Fantastic
nice if
catch.
you had some information. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Fantastic catch, CJ. Listen to what he says after this too, because this also perked my ears up when I heard it the first time.
Nuclear programs from China and Russia for a long time. They used to admit it. In recent years, they've denied it. I'm not sure those denials are credible. The North Korean
citation needed. Citation needed. But you already said, because I went pause there too. Citation needed. He even missed, like, they denied it from happening. So why are they doing these meetings for these weapons deals now? Like, anyway, let's continue.
Korean missile force is based on Russian supplied technology, formerly Scud missiles. But the potential now is very significant, because while North Korea has demonstrated both that it can detonate nuclear devices and that it can fire missiles that have a range to hit the continental United States, it has not yet demonstrated it has the targeting capability to hit the places it aims at, or necessarily the technology to bring a nuclear weapon back into the atmosphere in a warhead.
Quick question, fam. I want you to think about this. If North Korea is so dangerous, why do we keep fucking with them? Hey, CJ, I know some dangerous ass niggas in the hood here. I don't fuck with them. There's only one thing, and I want you guys, if you have North Korea Kim Jong-un derangement syndrome, I want you to understand this. There's only one thing that will cause North Korea to launch an attack, and that is if their country is in the brink of ruins and they had nothing to lose. So guess what John Bolton wants to create? Guess what situation he wants to create? He wants to destroy North Korea and put them in position where they have nothing to lose. If we leave these motherfuckers alone, they are not nuking California. Shit libs. Anyway, sorry. He didn't even get to the craziest part. Let me continue.
Head that's secure enough that it's not destroyed on re-entry. Russia obviously has both those capabilities. I'm sure that's what North Korea wants.
Ambassador, can I circle back to what you said about the idea of the end, people being asleep at the wheel or asleep at the switch to some degree?
So this guy does what she did not do. I actually did not catch it the first time, but this is the follow-up I went for. Because he said that crazy unhinged shit about ending North Korea, and then Dum Dum over there, the dumb blonde, whatever, she did ask a completely insignificant follow-up when you compare what the crazy shit he just said. So the other guy, like, hold on, let me circle back to that crazy shit you just said. And then you guys, I don't want to spoil. Listen to his questions. This is actually a good follow-up in the sense that he gets John Bolton to reveal himself. He still doesn't push back, but this is a good follow-up question. Listen to this part. This is what Dum Dum should have said over there.
Circle back to what you said about the idea of the end, people being asleep at the wheel or asleep at the switch to some degree, and the end of North Korea being kind of the necessary outcome at this point, not whatever has been happening, I think, over several administrations, several decades at this point. I guess my question is, how does that happen, right? If you look at allies in the region, while many people look at the current administration's policy as being, the Indo-Pacific policy as being entirely China-based, when you look at the relationship between Japan and South Korea that has formed and I think evolved over the course of the last couple of years, you could say that that also has to do with North Korea as well. What's the gap between that and ending North Korea as you propose? So
that was a word salad in a lot of ways, but it still was a good follow-up, because what he said is, you want to end North Korea, how are you doing that? Explain, how are you doing that, sir? That's a very wordy way of saying that. So let's listen. And I think this is, you have 1A and 1B, what he said earlier, and now you have this. This is crazy what you're about to say right now. So the question is, how will you end North Korea? Because you have criticism of Biden and other people for not doing enough. So let's hear John Bolton's solution to this problem.
Well, the division of North Korea into South Korea in 1945 was intended to be temporary,
right?
Just as we've seen the division between East and West Germany end. But for decades, American leaders in both parties have just routinely accepted that this hereditary communist dictatorship has to be the strangest form of government on earth today, is just going to go on forever. And I think we need to begin with a psychological and political change that we do not accept North Korea as a legitimate state. And I think
But what's the
cooperation between
policy?
South Korea and
I
Japan and the
understand.
U.S. is a big step toward it. The policy is simple, but not one that the administrations, Republican or Democratic, have been willing to follow, which is even more significant sanctions against North Korea. And
so he's saying the red and the blue team, they both think I'm crazier than a motherfucker, and they say no to this shit. That's what he's saying, Nick. He's saying they say I'm crazy to even want this. Both teams say that. That's what he's saying, Nick. Go ahead.
You know how crazy that is, fam? Because by the way, he even admits it. He even admits it in his answer. Even more sanctions. He say even more because we already sanctioning them to death. So what he said in his answer is he looked at every single president in the last few decades, and he like, you pussy, George W. Bush Jr., you pussy, Barack Obama, you pussy, Donald Trump, you pussy. We should completely enable a genocide against the North Korean people. That is what he's calling for. And the guy was like, what's your policy? What's your policy? You saying this? What's your policy? He said, starve them to death. So to show you guys how unhinged this psychopath is, let's say I see one of the comments acknowledge how psychopathic. To acknowledge how psychopathic this guy is, and generally U.S. politics is regarding North Korea, this is what they say, CJ. They say North Korea is a authoritarian dictatorship that creates a country that is bad for the North Korean people. So we must liberate North Korea so the North Korean people can live better. So in order to do that, we got to sanction and starve those same people to death. How does that compute? In order to liberate the North Korean people, we have to starve them to death. Do you guys think they really care about the North Korean people? So what John Bolton advocated for is to literally starve them and commit a genocide in North Korea so the Korean peninsula will be unified again. Kill as many North Koreans as it takes so that country will be weak enough so that South Korea can unify the Korean peninsula. This position is so insane. That's why Bowen said, nigga, even the most unhinged neocons in both parties look, I'm crazy.
That's exactly what they do.
So I asked him,
but that doesn't stop CNN. This is another time to point that out.
Yeah.
So CNN, John Bolton, the guy who Republicans and Democrats say is unhinged, a unhinged warmonger. You say bring that nigga on to be expert testimony. Yes. This is how far their Trump derangement has gone. Yes. This is how far it's gone. But go ahead, Nick.
John Bolton. That's a great point, CJ. They bring John Bolton on because he said Trump bad. John Bolton said Trump bad, so let's talk to him. So once again, that guy had a good initial follow, but is he gonna question this unhinged answer that I want to play again? Because I want to play this. This part is worth listening to again because this is when the guy asks the follow-up question: "What will you do?" And he starts with his nonsense. I think I'll play from right here. That's good.
And with a psychological and political change that we do not accept North Korea as a legitimate state. And I think cooperation between South Korea and Japan and the US is a big step toward it. The policy is simple, but not one that the administrations, Republican or Democratic, have been willing to follow, which is
why do you think that is
even more significant sanctions against North Korea and the determination and making it clear to both China and Russia that we expect that we're going to do what we said we'd do in 1945 and bring the regime back into unification with the South. If we don't focus on the policy, it won't happen.
Now, what they're not saying here, Nick,
worked in the Trump administration.
What they're not saying when they're talking about reunifying, you have to ask the question, why are they reunifying? What is the economic model of the people in North Korea that capitalists absolutely hate?
Yep.
Communism, or at least leaning towards communism. It's not a fully communistic state, but it has elements of communism. It projects that it wants to be that, and that's not something the capitalists can have. And he is one of the capitalists that is the most deranged, that is the most willing, Nick, to take it to the end. So you hear this guy like John Bolton, and then you ask, oh, why aren't they doing anything about climate change? You really think a person who thinks like this, listen to what he's saying. Armageddon, willing to take it there. why would they give a damn about climate change? This is why it doesn't make sense when we're talking about social democracy. I'm going on a little bit tangent. Social democracy, like Bernie Sanders and AOC, expecting this government to do anything tangibly for the climate crisis. But anyway, I went on a tangent. Go ahead, Nick. Back to North Korea.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
so this is why this is the real reason. This Cold War remnant ideology, destroying any alternative. You had the revolution that was inspired by Jusei ideology, where they completely rejected capitalism, which led the United States to commit a genocide because they not having that shit. They killed millions, and CJ, literally worth doing a live stream on this shit alone. And I need to bring an expert on because I'm not an expert at this. I read a lot about it. I've seen documentary. I'm not great at explaining it, but the United States government committed a genocide in order to prevent the rise of Marxist-Leninist ideology. The Jusei ideology is a blend of more like Buddhist, Southeast Chinese philosophy on how to love and take care of each other, and it's a blend of Marxist-Leninism. Now, once again, I need to learn more about this, but it's like a different blend and style of Marxist-Leninism, and the North Korean government is on the route and they are trying to achieve Marxist, Leninist, socialist ideologies and principles. That's why, once again, do you see massive homeless in North Korea? No, they give people houses. And to show you guys what I mean, they had food surplus all the time in certain fields and agriculture. For example, they grown a massive influx of peaches one year. They grew way too many peaches. The farmers overdid it. Like, man, we got so many peaches. You want to know what they did? They gave the peaches to the people. They fed the people with their production, with the means of production. Are they completely there? Not yet. But they completely solidify their means of production based on the people. Housing owned by the people. Food, everything ran by the people, right? So
meanwhile, in the United States, you have Walmart throwing away hundreds of pounds of food every single day, Nick.
Yep.
What would happen in the United States if the farmers grew too much?
You think
they will call up the local people and be like, hey, come get some free peaches? Fuck no. They'd rather throw that shit up because then that keeps the prices up. It's all about keeping the prices where they're at. But go ahead, Nick. It's so infuriating.
Now, shout out to our friend of the network, Didi. Because remember, Didi is a friend of the network. She was banned on Twitter a long time ago. She never came back because she didn't really care about it like that. Because she used to post these threads debunking U.S. propaganda against North Korea. That's why I'm mad she was banned, because she had a great tweet thread talking about the peaches and how they distribute food in North Korea. Things that they will never talk about in this country. How North Korea struggles because they are victims of Western sanctions. But with the resources that they use to feed, clothe, and house their people. So this is the question for capitalists. If you guys believe that Marxist-Leninist socialist ideology does not work, why won't you leave them alone? Why don't you stop the sanctions on North Korea and allow them to function properly? They don't do that. They starve the country and then say, oh my God, look how North Korea is struggling. It's because of the sanctions. They take care of their people to the best of their ability despite massive sanctions. The United States is a country that is sanctioned by nobody but has Skid Row and hunger. You guys see how one system is a failure compared to the other? Yeah, our country is unsanctioned with poor people. You guys see the difference? Anyway, I kind of went off a tangent, and I kind of split these into two segments. So, Aaron, these probably gonna be two different segments because the DPRK and the Vivek. The Vivek segment I don't think is gonna be as long as this one, because that's more like a funny footnote, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think this part gonna be way longer than the Vivek part. But so John Bolton says it's crazy shit. John Bolton essentially says he's going to commit, and he would like to see the United States commit a genocide in North Korea. So you asked this question earlier, CJ. What do they say after their guest says the top 3 most unhinged thing this year on your show? What do you say in response to that? So let's see. I'll just go back a few seconds. Let's look at their follow-up.
To do what we said we'd do in 1945 and bring the regime back into unification with the South. If we don't focus on the policy, it won't happen.
You worked in the Trump administration, but have since been very critical of the way that Trump has interacted with, courtship with, if you will, Kim and Putin.
Yeah, I know you. I know you just said some crazy ass shit, but you said Trump bad. Can you say Trump bad first, please? Say it again. We love when you say Trump bad. Do it again.
It was so uncomfortable. The guy, when he turned and looked at her, you can cut that uncomfortability. I can see that both of you are so uncomfortable with what that guy was just saying, and it's so surreal. But go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, let's see what he said this part. I actually don't remember this part, so I actually want to see what they say here.
But have since been very critical of the way that Trump has interacted with, courtship with, if you will, Kim and Putin.
To that point, that's what I explained earlier. Remember, the one good thing Trump did was try to normalize relationships with North Korea. The only good fucking thing. So I used to see communists that around my community all the time. They used to say, CJ, that even though they're not voting for Trump, the idea that Biden is lesser to evil compared to Trump is not true. They view Trump as a lesser evil just because of his North Korea policy. So they're so close, right, that you can't separate them. The North Korea thing, they were like, nigga, Trump is the lesser evil. He normalized the relationship with DPRK. Anyway, let's continue. And so this is where they bring up this difference. And this is what led John Bolton to leave Trump's administration. And that's when he became a Trump hater because he was so appalled at Trump's DPRK policy. So this is where they addressed that. And I actually forget what John Bolton says here in response. So I want to see what he says.
Kim and Putin. I'm interested in your take on how one of his Republican competitors in the primary, Vivek Ramaswamy, chose to not answer questions about whether he thinks Putin is a war criminal, because it reminds me of some questions that then President Trump was asked about Putin. Here's that exchange with reporters yesterday in New Hampshire.
Yes or no?
I think that Putin is a dictator, and I think that there are open questions that need to be adjudicated by the ICCJ. We have an ICCJ for a reason. My job as the U.S. president is to advance American interests. So I think Putin's actions have been craven. Not much I will say, and I've said it all along.
But do you believe he's a war criminal?
We have to get the facts before we get to the bottom of that.
These motherfuckers discovered the word war criminal literally last year, CJ. When have you ever seen them talk about war criminals on corporate media? And then they want people to pretend that only Putin is a war criminal. But I'll let it continue real quick.
You previously called the International Criminal Court illegitimate when it issued that warrant to arrest Putin, accusing him of war crimes. What do you make of Vivek Ramaswamy not answering the question of whether or not he thinks Putin is a war criminal?
Well,
can you pause it? What is the value? What is the value in asking a slave owner if another slave, what I'm trying to get at is, what is the value in this war criminal calling out a person for not saying somebody else is a war? I don't get what the value in this, in getting his answer would be, even if, what is the value in that he is saying this? That's what I don't get. But go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, that just shows CNN's bias, and that's why. Once again, this don't have to be a long part. In fact, I'll change my mind. We can probably throw this at the end of the last segment because you guys see how absurd it is for CNN to bring on John Bolton to criticize Vivek Ramaswamy for not calling Putin a war criminal, as CNN does not inform their audience that John Bolton is a war criminal. You guys see how absurd this is? So I forgot what he said here, because I remember at this part I kind of raised quick. I was like, dude, this is so stupid. You asking a war criminal about this.
Yeah.
And fam, let me say this straight up. If you believe that Vladimir Putin has killed more people than Joe Biden, you are the sweetest summer child I ever seen in my life. You're the sweetest of the brand of summer children. If you believe that Putin, even with the Ukraine war, is anywhere near Joe Biden, you are the sweetest child possible if you believe that. But meanwhile, CNN would never dare to call Joe Biden a war criminal. Propaganda report. Media put these people as the most reliable news outlet. That's surely not propaganda. Only RBN does propaganda. That's which I admit. I do anti-imperialist propaganda exposing these people. I do propaganda on behalf of the working class, on behalf of the anti-war movements. I do propaganda, and I do the job that journalists should be doing. The fourth estate that hold these motherfuckers responsible, not giving them a tongue bath interview. So for the sake of time, we can wrap the segment up. Let's listen to a response, and then we close real quick. There'll be the last part of play.
I think Ramaswamy reminds me an awful lot of Donald Trump. He has very firm opinions on subjects he knows absolutely nothing about, and this was an example of it. And if he supports the International Criminal Court,
this is why they bring him
as
on,
he appeared to do in that statement, I hope he reaffirms that and makes clear why he thinks the ICC is such a good idea. Look, this is something that ultimately is going to have to be resolved either by the Russians themselves or by the Ukrainians. And the main point is that Ramaswamy has made other statements about this war and about what he's going to do to try and solve it. Like Trump said, he would put Zelensky and Putin in a room and he'd have it solved in 24 hours. Ramaswamy is going to go to Moscow, convince Putin to break the alliance with China and end the war that way. I mean, they might as well be in kindergarten talking about a very complex.
This is why Vivek is a horrible messenger, the same way that RFK is a horrible messenger, because the first thing that Vivek says is realistic and based, because it's possible. Who broke up a peace deal that was going to happen? Boris Johnson in the United States. So it is 100% possible to get Zelensky and Putin in a room, because that is what they initially want until Zelensky got ordered from the West. So the first thing Vivek said is good. But this is why Vivek is a clown that must be called out. You guys see, he says one true thing, and he says one thing that's fucking stupid as hell. So now what John Bolton does, because this is actually a great, I didn't catch this the first time I watched this. This is actually a great propaganda technique that John Bolton does, because he took a good thing that Vivek said, and then he ties it with the dumb shit he said. He said, well, he also believes that you can end the Russia-China alliance. You see how he believes these two dumb things? That's why we can't have imperfect messengers like Vivek, because he leaves opening like this where he can tie these things together. That's why Alex Jones is very problematic. Alex Jones will say one thing that is true, but then he will say some other bullshit that delegitimizes other true claims. And John Bolton actually takes advantage of it pretty well there. But anyway, I think I can wrap here. I just want to point, because I think we went pretty long on that. We can get super chats. Short segments that you have, CJ?
Not a short segment, but I do want to add something to this segment.
Go ahead.
It's roughly related, and maybe we can dive into the article another time, like the details of this article. But I don't know if you saw this on the Washington Post, and because we're talking about Ukraine, all these sort of foreign policy, but Russiagate is back, and John Bolton still sort of pushes Russiagate. But Musk's new Twitter policy helped spread Russian propaganda EU, and this is specifically about Ukraine. So basically, they're trying to say what we believe and why support for Ukraine is going down is because of some Russian disinformation on platforms as such as Twitter. But we'll get into this later. But I did want to include that in this segment with John Bolton, because all of this is sort of playing the same sort of role. You got the propaganda about Korea, and then you got the propaganda about Russia and Ukraine. That it all ties together, and the narratives for all of this are falling apart. That's why you're seeing them bring on John Bolton, because the narrative about it is falling apart. That's why you're seeing articles like this in the Washington Post where they're talking about there's still Russian disinformation. I just can't believe, Nick, even after the Twitter files, even after all of these things, they're still trying to push the stuff about North Korea. They're still trying to push the stuff about China. They're still trying to push the stuff about the proxy war in Russia. It's unbelievable, but it all ties together. That's my final word on
that just show how power never concedes anything without struggle. Do you guys think that the establishment will allow us to tell the truth about stuff just because the internet came about? No, they're going to do everything they can to clamp down and control the flow of information. And if things really get squirrely, you guys see exactly why they expanded the police state, exactly why they needed the Patriot Act. Why you guys think? Do you guys think it's a coincidence that they building Cop City just as people were becoming more class conscious, as late stage capitalism continued to get worse? Now they got Cop City. You guys think that? Yeah. No, they're arming up and getting ready for this rising discontent against our government. That's gonna happen. I think it's been slow. I think it should happen earlier. Obviously, what the Bernie movement tried to capture was something that we wanted to propel to a larger movement, but it's gonna happen. We just want it to happen faster, right? I want it to happen with less people dying, but whether it happen in 5 years, 25 years, as a revolutionary, I truly believe with the state of our society that shit is gonna pop off soon. We just wanted it to happen before we have 70,000 plus more people die each year without healthcare. You know what I mean? So the establishment, understanding this, is getting their army ready. And they are continuing to poke the bear at the workers. How much can we get away with? How much can the capitalist class steal from the workers without them rebelling? How much can we strip away their labor protections? You guys know they got child fucking labor back? Child labor is back. So they're like, man, we're going to see how much we can get away with until these niggas snap. And when they do snap, they fucked up because they gave us a police state to squash it. These fucking dumbass motherfuckers. They said we got Second Amendment to stand against the government. Meanwhile, they gave us all the guns. They gave us tanks and shit. They gave us armored cars. But then they think they're going to resist the government. Great job. Great job, guys. Helping our establishment build police states so they can resist the workers. Fantastic move by the left, guys. But anyway, that's my last rant. I probably got dips.
We can read super chats. I got a dip. So yeah. So for those watching, when unless it's nighttime, it'll be around this time when I go live. I do have to kind of adjust my time schedule because I got to get out of here by 4 o'clock to get my daughter from preschool. So that is the reason I got to get out of here. Kind of a hard out. But let's get to the super chats and then we can get out of here.
Okay. Thanks for the 999 moose. Dr. West needs to stop calling Trump a fascist, but will never call Biden a fascist. This is a huge problem. I hope you guys can help him with that. And that's something that we addressed him multiple times.
Just recently, his last interview, we asked him about that. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah. I strongly disagree because there's some people that are like, man, why Dr. Cornel West so hard on Trump? I don't care that Dr. Cornel West called Trump a fascist at all because that is what he is. You know the guy we just showed, he got John Bolton, he hired that guy. Gave him a position, gave Mike Pompeo a position, expanded the police state. He is a fascist. He didn't do the swamp that he said he's going to drain, he did not drain at all. The problem is when you don't call Biden that, when Biden doubles down on all Trump's policies. And I think that's when people get turned off because people don't get mad at me when I call Trump a fascist because they know I acknowledge that the Democratic Party is a fascist. But one thing I think people misunderstand about Dr. Cornel West's answer, which I think Dr. Cornel West needs to find a way to better explain himself. Remember when we pressed him on this issue? He said, well, I view neoliberalism as a strain of fascism. When I say that Donald Trump is a gangster, when I say that Donald Trump is unique, is a gangster, I'm not saying that's only a bad thing. You know what I mean? Like, there's a thing that he needs to get better and sharper at because he mentioned how he viewed neoliberalism as a strain of fascism, which is true. Neoliberalism emboldens fascism and leads to fascism. It is a very close relative that fascism needs to survive. You know what I mean? Fascism is a dependent of neoliberalism. Right. Fascism is the mentally need child that need the coddling and protection of the neoliberal relative. That's probably the best analogy I can use right now. But that's kind of what Cornel West understands. But he needs to understand. Dr. Cornel West needs to understand that when you do short CNN interviews and MSNBC interviews, you don't have time to explain that. Right. So I never really got mad because I understood what he meant because I view neoliberalism as a strain of fascism. But when you go on any other show, Fox News, if you go on Russell Brand, if you go on Jimmy, you say that you don't have time to spill out what we know as revolutionaries, as people who read theory. So the average person just say, oh, you think Biden's just a neoliberal? You think Trump is a fascist? Meanwhile, we see those as two things. You know what I mean? It's not much distinction there. But go ahead, CJ.
It's an intellectual sort of blind spot, but not in a it is an intellectual blind spot because
you need to work on
when you know neoliberalism, this shit is offsprings. What's the problem? Because he's intellectual. So it's always a reflex. Well, I already know this is cousins here. But the average person is not that in that place, and that's what we're gonna address it with him again. This is where Cornel West had intellectually, it's an intellectual blind spot because he understands that. He doesn't see it as that big of a difference, but like he's saying, he has to understand most people don't see it in that way. They're not intellectual in that capacity that he is. But go ahead.
Yeah. Once again, just mention you gotta be able to explain your beliefs in a way that wins people over, right? Thank you for the $10, ARJ. U.S. media, John Bolton is a partisan warmonger. John Bolton, I wanted to criticize Trump. U.S. media, you're invited to polite society and all your sins are forgiven. So essentially, no matter what you did, as long as you want to criticize Trump, your sins are forgiven. They even forgave George W. Bush because he criticized Trump.
Crazy.
There's no low that you can sing. I'll put George W. Bush is always. I was about to say something that's incorrect. I was about to say I'll put John Bolton and George W. Bush. No. Because George W. Bush is a accomplished, a very, very accomplished war criminal. John Bolton he got a lot done, especially in Venezuela. He brags about how he starred the Venezuelan economy. John Bolton got a lot of accomplishment, but I almost said something that was completely false. Because George W. Bush is the modern king. You know what I mean? He like the LeBron James. Like, this motherfucker completely destabilized the Middle East. Like, what he did led to other horrible decisions. Like, we are still cleaning up from his original decision. You know what I mean? But anyway, I need to stop ranting. Let's get out here. Thank you for the $5. This North Korea problem has no proxy war solution for the West. So additional extra sanctions on them and more U.S. bases in South Korea. Well said. Thank you for the $5, ARJ. I think this is the last one. Thank you for $5. The Ryzen. Please read The Big Myth. It talks about market fundamentalism and how its underlying ideology of our ruling class. The market can do no wrong. I haven't read the book. It seemed like a decent recommendation. Thank you for the super chat. I think that's it for today. CJ, any last thing you want?
No, just gonna play the outro video. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow. I probably will be back for straight out of politics during the day, so I'll let you know. But other than that, we're gonna get out of here.
I see you guys.
Anything else, Nick? All right.
The Biden administration is way more corrupt than most people realize. President Biden's Infrastructure Advisory Board just released a report calling for the privatization of water. The report suggests that the federal government, and I quote, remove barriers towards privatization. So who's on Joe Biden's National Infrastructure Advisory Council in the first place? Surely the Biden administration chose an intellectual to lead this advisory group and not someone who had conflicts of interest, right? Right? The Biden administration picked someone who was on the board of Goldman Sachs. The board of Goldman Sachs. You can't make this up. So for those who think we live in a democracy, how the hell did we vote Goldman Sachs out of our government? Motherfucker is literally a CEO of an investment infrastructure bank worth $100 billion that literally profits from water privatization. Water privatization was something that civil rights groups and progressives opposed for decades for obvious reasons. Meanwhile, this is what the Biden administration is pushing for, but he's still endorsed by progressives. Just another example of Joe Biden and Democrats getting away with what Republicans wish they could.